Revenge films.
My name is Ted. This story is about the time that my family and I attended a relative's wedding. The wedding took place a year ago. The bride was my cousin on my father's side. We didn't live close to one another, so we rarely saw each other, only for family gatherings such as this wedding. I heard that my cousin and her fiancé hadn't known each other for that long before deciding to get married. The reason why they decided to get married was because my cousin was pregnant with her fiancé's child. The wedding was a cookie-cutter wedding, and once it began, everything went smoothly. It was now time for the wedding reception to start. It was the first time for me to meet the groom, but he seemed like a really nice guy. And he was really attentive and made sure that my pregnant cousin was comfortable throughout the reception.
The groom is such a gentleman. I'm glad that your cousin found a kind man like him to marry. And I heard that he has a prestigious job too, so they have financial stability as well.
The rest of my family liked him too. Reception went on without any issues. But when it came time to do a slideshow of photos of the bride and groom, something very unexpected happened. The slideshow began and showed a photo of a small girl at the park. She was a cute-looking girl wearing a pretty dress. At first I thought it was a photo of my cousin when she was small, but when I looked closely at the girl's face, she didn't look like my cousin at all. And when my cousin was a child, she liked to do a variety of sports, and she would often engage herself in sports. So it did make sense that the girl in the photo had really white skin. My cousin always had a tan from being outside all the time. We were all wondering who the little girl in the photo was. Then the groom picked up the microphone and began explaining. "This is a photo of my childhood best friend." I wondered if he meant ex-girlfriend, but I assumed that he wouldn't make a slideshow about his ex at his own wedding. The groom continued to talk about his childhood and was really enjoying it. "I have so many beautiful memories with my friend. I love my friend so much. She means so much to me." There were a lot of photos of his friend in the slideshow. The photos showed the girl at every age until she became an adult. She grew up to be gorgeous. The wedding guests wondered when there would be photos of my cousin and when he would start talking about how the two met and fell in love. I took a look at my sister's face and her expression showed that she was perplexed.
Something's not adding up.
I was also curious to see how my cousin was reacting to the slideshow, but she was seated too far from me in order for me to tell. But I saw that my cousin's parents were watching the slideshow expressionless. The groom didn't seem to notice, and he went on talking about his best friend. I assumed that his best friend was at the wedding, but I couldn't spot her out in the venue. Found out soon after that she wasn't at the wedding, which was odd. The groom went on to explain that he had invited his best friend to the wedding, but she couldn't make it. He seemed really disappointed about it. The slideshow ended up being all about the groom's best friend, and it didn't mention my cousin once. After seeing the slideshow, we all assumed that the love of the groom's life was his best friend and that my cousin was his second choice. But since my cousin and her husband had already registered their marriage at the city hall, they would continue to be husband and wife on paper. 6 months passed after the wedding. I heard that my cousin filed for a divorce and requested that her ex-husband pay her a high alimony. My mother told me that after my cousin got divorced, she told my mother that
I don't want my ex-husband to meet the baby after it is born. I hate him so much.
I don't blame her. I mean, who is crazy enough to confess their love for someone else at their own wedding?
Actually, that's not the full story.
Tell me.
So, the reason that they got a divorce is not because her husband was in love with his childhood friend.
What my mother told me was shocking to say the least. The girl in the slideshow shown at the wedding was not his childhood friend or ex-girlfriend. It was a girl that my cousin's husband had been stalking. After the wedding, my cousin received a phone call from the girl that was being stalked.
Your husband won't stop following me around, and I'm really scared. I'm thinking of suing him and making sure that he's not legally allowed to come near me anymore.
My cousin met up with this woman to get the details from her, and she told her that her husband had been stalking her since she was a child. She thought that it would stop after he got married, but since he didn't, she had to do something about it. That's why my cousin's husband had so many photos of the woman, and from a young age, too. When the woman was a child, she didn't know what stalking meant, but now that she was grown up, she knew that it was an unforgivable crime. When the woman was in high school, my cousin's ex-husband became even more obsessed and began to wait for her in front of her house and follow her around without actually coming up to talk to her. They went to different high schools, but he would wait in front of the school gate so that he could follow her home from school. There were times when the woman was taking a bath at home and she would often feel his presence by her bathroom window. She got so scared that she asked her parents to install a security camera, and he was caught on tape. She and her parents notified the police right away, but he denies his crimes. I was just walking through the neighborhood. I never tried to break into her house or watch her bathe. Because of the lack of evidence, the police weren't able to take any actions. They told her without proof of breaking and entering, they couldn't charge him with anything. The woman felt helpless, so after graduating from high school, she decided to move far away so that she wouldn't have to bump into my cousin's ex-husband anymore. After moving, my cousin's ex-husband wasn't able to follow her around or stalk her anymore. But once he was engaged to my cousin, he began to call the woman persistently and wouldn't give up. There was one time that she picked up the call by mistake, and what he told her was nauseating. I wanted to get married to you. I know you feel the same way too, but I had to give you up because you moved so far away. I was heartbroken because I couldn't see you anymore. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you, but now that we're so far apart, I'm emotionally unwell. So I decided to marry someone that resembled you. I imagined that my fiancé was you, and it made me feel a little better. But then my fiancé became pregnant, and I was so disappointed in myself for ending up with someone that I didn't love. You will always be my true love. If you ask me to break up with my fiancé, I'd do that for you in a second. I will always be here for you, my love. The woman was smart enough to record the phone conversation so that she could provide it to the police as evidence. My cousin also listened to the recording and decided that she should get a divorce and raise her baby on her own. She packed up all her things while her husband was at work. She made a copy of the recorded phone conversation and submitted it to her divorce lawyer. The two were now talking about how much child support and alimony my cousin's ex-husband should pay her. The woman submitted all the evidence she had of the stalking and reported it to the police. But because my cousin's ex-husband hadn't done anything to her directly, they couldn't make an arrest or anything. Because the police aren't able to help her, the woman is considering filing a complaint to the court. For the moment, it looked like my cousin's ex-husband was going to get away with his crime of stalking the woman. But it turned out that things were not going to be so easy for him. Because he had invited some people from his workplace to his wedding, he basically made a public confession to them that he was a stalker. My cousin's ex-husband worked as a teacher at an elementary school. Rumors that he was stalking a woman who was not his wife spread quickly and reached the members of the PTA. When they asked him what was going on, he was very truthful and gave the same explanation that he did to the woman that he was stalking. Parents were very concerned about having a sociopath as a teacher to their children, and many of them made complaints. The school had no choice but to let him go after this. I shared all this information with my sister, who left my cousin's wedding with a lot of questions.
It all makes sense now.
I asked her what she meant by that, and she said,
Didn't you notice at the wedding? The photo and the slideshow were all really unnatural. There wasn't a single picture where the two of them were photographed together, and the girl was never facing the camera, which means that he took those photos without her knowledge. And when the groom talked about the girl in the photos at his wedding, he had a very creepy expression on his face. When I saw his face, I figured that his affection for her wasn't mutual.
You're so attentive to details! Her explanation makes perfect sense.
How did you not see any of that?
To be honest, at the wedding, I was just in shock about the fact that the groom was going on and on about a woman that was not his wife-to-be. I wasn't paying attention to the small details. I had a very good impression of him when I first saw him. He was very attentive to the needs of my pregnant cousin. But now that I know that he's a stalker, he gives me the creeps. I couldn't tell by his appearance alone that he was a complete sociopath.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.